Worthy Ones, the video series where each and every week I take the newest #1 comic books that I read for the current comic book week and deem them worthy or not worthy. I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love daily comic book content, if you love me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy, guys, why don't you consider hitting that subscribe button, and it's much appreciated. So before we dive into it, guys, I just want to give a quick shout out to a new Kickstarter that is going to be launched very soon from Destiny Horizons. This is Lords of LA Issue 2, Vampire, the Mob in 1950s Hollywood. So if you guys love vampires, monsters, the setting in the 1950s Hollywood, I think you're gonna love this. So make sure you save it on Kickstarter, and I will notify you as soon as it launches. So in this week's episode, I did not get a chance to read Amazon's Attack Issue 1 and Alan Scott Issue 1. And just for the sake of time, I was like, you know what? I read all the scary books first. So since Halloween is right around the corner, why don't we kind of make this a Halloween-themed type of episode of Worthy Ones? I thought it was very fitting. And the first book we're going to be talking about today is Hallows' Eve, The Big Night Issue 1. So I'm a fan of this character. I love her power set. Her mission is to obviously release Scarlet Spider from captivity that Madeline Pryor has, and she's kind of failed at that situation based off of what happened in the last miniseries. So here we get a one-shot when it comes to the character, and we get to see what she's doing right now. This book is written by Erica Schultz. The artwork is done by Michael Dowling. Now, the art is okay in this book, but at times I felt like Hallows' Eve could have been done a little bit better. It was kind of cool to see her get these different power sets that you haven't seen before. And if you're not familiar with the character, I felt like this was a little bit of a cool jumping on point because you get to see her power set. So in case you don't know, she kind of looks like a lady hobgoblin. It's even referenced in the comic book here. And then also you get to see her use masks that she's never used before. So she actually used like a Captain America mask. She used a Hulk mask. And it was cool seeing those different types of, masks being used in her power sets, right? So let's talk about the overall story, though, when it's come to this comic book, and if it was worthy of your hard-earned cash here of $5. So it's October 31st at Empire State University. These kids have a party that they're doing. They're powerless kids. They've come across this finger from limbo, and they hope to score a bunch of chicks at their house. Well, it all goes wrong, basically. And what it does, it sets off this spell that gives just regular Joe Schmoes supernatural powers. They turn into monsters and things like that. And Hallows' Eve just happens to be within that area. And even though she doesn't turn into a monster because the spell is cast from limbo, her masks change. She gets like different masks. So like I showed you earlier, you got to see her portray like a Captain America and a Hulk, and you get to see her do those different types of powers. Now, even though, like, it was cool to see that, I thought this was going to be something completely different. Something that was going to lead into the next story for Hallows' Eve, and it left me underwhelmed, right? It was just kind of like, oh, let's just stop these magical, mystical spell that's going on, and that was the end of the book. There wasn't really exciting that happened. There wasn't anything that really gravitated you to the book that made you honestly wanted to read the character more if you're new to reading her. I like her, so like I'm going to continue reading her, but this book is not worth it. In my opinion, I just felt like wanting more. I was turning the pages and I'm like, this is it? This is all we got? Like, when you look at the cover of this comic book, you get to see all these cool masks that she has. And throughout the comic book, you see two masks that she wears, Captain America and Hulk. Why not explore some other characters, right? You had the page count to do it. 3/4 of the book, she was basically Captain America through the whole thing. So I did leave myself underwhelmed with this book, and I wanted more, and I'm just going to wait until the next story, and hopefully the next story will be better. So grading this book, I'm going to give this one a C-, unfortunately. I thought Hallows' Eve could have looked better. I thought the action scenes could have been better. And her power set, she could have used more. And the story was kind of weak in my opinion. So maybe next time. Marvel Zombies Black, White, and Blood issue 1. Now, we've gotten Black, White, and Blood books for a while now. We've had Marvel Zombie books even longer. But when you mesh the two together, it makes for a pretty sweet read. Now, I'm not a fan of anthology comic books, but there's only 3 stories here, and the stories are just long enough to have the story breathe and to comprehend it and to make it a story to where it's like, oh, this is good or this is not so good, right? The draw to this comic is actually Garth Ennis. Like, he writes a story in here with Daredevil. There's another story in here with Spider-Man, and there's another story in here with Moon Knight, and all solid stories. My least favorite, though, was the Moon Knight story. The artwork is different throughout, but of course what you can expect consistency is that black, white, and blood type of style of coloring, and it really makes the comic pop, and I think it really works for a horror themed comic book. Now, the Daredevil story was one of my favorites, as we get to see him as a Marvel zombie, and he's put in this arena against other creatures and beings, and he's like the champion. And even though he's a zombie, he still can hear. He has his senses and things like that. The Punisher is involved in this comic book. He's kind of guiding Daredevil in a certain direction to do a certain something, which I thought was actually very cool, right? The next story, again, where we have Spider-Man in here, was a very... I felt like it hit Spider-Man perfect, because he's taking on all the responsibility of saving his city, and his loved ones are turning into zombies, and he's trying to protect them. And there was definitely a very heart-wrenching moment in here when he comes across Aunt May, and he's looking for J. Jonah Jameson and Mary Jane, and check out that page right there. Just so good. I thought this was absolutely amazingly done. And then at the end of that story, it was just like, oh man, really? And then you get a final story here with Moon Knight and Iron Man as they're fighting against each other, and of course Khonshu being a kind of a dickhead that he is and whatnot. But it was very graphic and very gory. Not my favorite out of the 3, but it was still also an entertaining read. So if you love horror, you love Marvel Zombies, if you love Black, White, and Blood books, this book is worthy, and it's very fitting for the Halloween time, right? So I thought it was, you know, worth that $6. It is a little bit, you know, a little bit pricey, but it does give you 36 pages. And again, I'm a sucker for horror, and when it's written right, you get me every time, man. And you can get to choose from your favorite variant covers, and there's some great ones out there. So giving this book a grade, I'm going to give this one a solid A. This was a good one. That Moon Knight story didn't hit it all cylinders for me. That's why I couldn't give it an A+, but I was intrigued, and it was definitely a page turner. Universal Monsters Dracula issue 1, done by James Tynion, and Martin Simmons does the artwork. Now, this very much has a old school feel to it, that watercolored artwork, which is absolutely amazing. Also reminds me of Department of Truth. It's very like blurred and has this old school feel, but intense at the same time. Like there's creepy eyeballs just staring at you, the reader, and Dracula trying to hypnotize you like he does his ladies in the comic books and whatnot. This book was really intense. And again, this takes place in the olden days of Dracula, like when he was first, created, not a modern telling, right? And it's all about this guy right here This is a lackey for Dracula himself, and he tells all these crazy stories how he's going to come and he's going to take over the world and whatnot. And this particular psychiatric doctor doesn't want to hear all this gobbledygook, right? And he tries to talk reason with this dude, and the doctor's like, it seems like you have this bad infection and we have this new technology where we're going to replace all your blood. It's basically a blood transfusion, right? And we feel that you'll be cured by the time everything is done and over with. And he just like freaks out, and he's just like, no, he's like, you can't do that to me. And, it's just like, then he starts releasing all these bugs from his body because he's been eating bugs, and he's saving all the real meals for the master, and, all hell breaks loose. And obviously Dracula has this hive mind, like he can see through all his lackeys. And being that they want to kill his little lackey, it awakens Dracula, and you get to see like his eyeballs and him in the coffin and stuff like that. I was blown away by this comic book. I'm like, wow, this is great. Not my typical style of artwork, but I was just so intrigued by the story. So this book is absolutely worthy. I say pick this one up. James Tynion does it again. Great story here. The cool thing is there's two ladies in this comic book as well, and you get to see one of the ladies kind of falling under Dracula's like hypnotism, like her falling in love with him and stuff like that. Read the story. I don't think you'll be disappointed. The artwork, again, might be a turnoff for some people, but if you love horror books, if you love scary books, if you love, Universal monsters, and you love Tynion's running, this one's for you. So I'm going to give this one also an A. Edenwood issue 1, written and drawn by Tony S. Daniel. I didn't know what to expect when it came to this story, to tell you the truth. Every time I read the synopsis of this book, I was like, oh, Demon Slayer. No, he's a demon killer. Like, cause it references this every time in the comic book. I always wanted to say Demon Slayer, but he is a demon killer in here. What can you expect though when it comes to the artwork from Tony S. Daniel? Nothing but perfection. The facial expressions look great. His colorist, Natalia Marquez, does a great job at bringing all these characters to life here. When the action does get going in this comic book, the transformations from like humans to demons are grotesque and scary, and you gotta love the main character in here as well, as he's the demon character, or the demon killer character, not Demon Slayer. So what was this story about? Well, in the beginning of this story, we see a whole bunch of kids, and they're off at some bay, playing around, messing around and stuff like that. And when it comes to an independent comic book and you get overwhelmed with a bunch of characters at first, you're kind of like, oh man, here we go. Like, how am I going to remember all these characters right from the start? And then they throw in this complex plot and all this other stuff. And so there was a lot of dialogue in this book, and it took a while for it to get going, right? But all of a sudden, there's this accident happens, and we wind up getting to see, I think the main character's name is Ryan, or something like that. He's missing his girlfriend, Adelia, because she went after her dog, Pip, and they couldn't find it. Well, they wind up going into this different pathway, into this different realm within Earth. And in these realms, time is different. 5 minutes can be 5 years and all kinds of different stuff. And what happens is our main character comes across a type of soldier on the ground, and we're led to believe that it's kind of a trick, and these dead things are demons, and they will attack anything and everything at any time. And then you come across the main character, who is the demon killer, okay? And he promises to go find his girlfriend. And it was an interesting concept of a story. And by the time you wind up getting to the end of the story, it throws you for a little bit of a twist, and you're kind of scratching your head going, oh my God, that's insane. So this book is worthy. I actually really like this book. It took me 2 reads to get through this one because I was a little bit overwhelmed by the cast of characters here, the mythology of what goes on, the time periods and whatnot, and not getting confused with demons and the real characters. And nevertheless, though, I feel like that Tony S. Daniel has got something going here. I feel like it could get a little complex, but I think it's pretty good, man. So if you're looking for something different and you love creepy, horrific stuff and you like demons and that type of crap, you know, go out and buy it. So I'm going to give this one a solid B. It was a good read. I'm looking forward to issue 2. So there you have it, guys. There are the scary books that I deemed worthy or not worthy for this week's Worthy Ones. I want to know, what were your favorite issue ones for the current comic book week? And as always, guys, I'm going to leave you more content right here. In fact, this is all the comic books I picked up for the current comic book week. And as always, support those local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting. But always remember, guys, read your comic books. Guys, I'll see you real soon. Take care.